I already started. I just embarrassed the entire 82nd Airborne in front of a bunch of Marines. I'll never live it down with my friends. Before we start, just some housekeeping things. I'd like to just thank a few people. I'd like to thank the Waterford Town Board, the Village of Waterford, our Waterford Police Department, all of our Waterford Fire Departments, as well as Half Moon Waterford, our Highway Department and Superintendent Harry Martell, our Waterford Town Clerk's Office, Waterford VFW Memorial Post 5800, in particular Andy Walters, Ronnie Bennett, and Tom Doyne, our Saratoga County Board of Supervisors, Chairman Ed Kanowski, the County Administrator's Office, One Day Signs, McGreevy's, North Country Printing, Jersey Tents, Capitol Brass, our bagpiper, Allie Crowley Duncan, and of course the United States Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, would you please rise for the posting of the colors? Color guard, post the colors. Hand salute. Two. And now, please remain standing for our national anthem by Capitol Brass. Thank you. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the town of Waterford and the Goyette family, we'd like to thank you and welcome you to our ceremony honoring Major Caine Michael Goyette. Caine is represented by quite a few members of his family, and in particular his father, Cliff Goyette, and his sister, Aaliyah Goyette. Caine was born on May 7, 1976, here in Troy, and he was raised just a short distance from this park. He graduated from Waterford Half Moon in 1994 and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, serving at Stewart Air National Guard Base as a calibration technician, reaching the rank of sergeant. He earned a degree in electrical and computer systems engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and commissioned as an active duty officer in 2002. Caine completed flight training at Whiting Field, Corpus Christi, and Cherry Point, ultimately flying the KC-130. His duty stations included Futenma, Okinawa, Syracuse for recruiting, Stewart Air National Guard Base, and Bahrain. He flew missions in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, a Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force in Africa, and a number of humanitarian missions. During his Bahrain tour, Caine served as a senior air watch officer for the 5th Marine Expeditionary Brigade, supporting Operation Inherent Resolve, in addition to operations across the Central Command area of responsibility. Most recently, he was serving as operations officer at VMGR 452. On a personal note, I would like to say that I knew Caine and I have fond memories of him as kids when we all ran the streets of the village here in this neighborhood playing games of tag, wiffle ball, you name it, and of course exploring Peebles Island. At this time, for some brief remarks, I'd like to introduce to the podium our town supervisor, John Lawler.
Good evening, everyone, and as Frank said, thank you all for being here this evening as Caine's family, his friends, his comrades in arms, and the entire Waterford community comes together to celebrate Major Caine Goyette's life of devotion to his family and his service to our country. As Frank did, and before we begin our formal program, I also would like to thank everyone who has helped to make this event possible. There are too many of you to mention by name, but rest assured that your efforts have not gone unnoticed. We are extremely grateful to all of you. I would like to especially recognize the efforts of our Master of Ceremonies this evening, Councilman Frank McClement. He has worked tirelessly to organize this evening's ceremony. And Frank, thank you very much for taking on this difficult job and getting it done so very well. I also want to welcome and recognize Congressman Paul Tonko, Senator Kathy Marchione, County Clerk Craig Hayner, along with all of the other town and village officials who are here to honor Caine's memory and, more importantly, to support the Goyette family in this difficult time. Caine was a native son of Waterford, and he will always be remembered and honored by the people of his hometown. I promise you that the people of Waterford will see to that. He was a truly remarkable man, and he had accomplished so much in his life. Cliff, you and your family are no doubt extremely proud of him. We all are. Caine's passing under such tragic circumstances has deeply touched many people in our community. Everyone in Waterford wants to express their condolences to the Goyette family and to also recognize Caine's exemplary service to our nation. And so on behalf of all of the people in Waterford, and as I look out here, I can say there are so many of them here tonight, I'd like to present this plaque to Caine's family as a small token of our support for your family in this very difficult time. And it's simply a plaque from the town of Waterford, and it reads, "In memory of Major Caine M. Goyette, United States Marine Corps, May 7, 1976 through July 10, 2017, presented to the Goyette family in recognition of the devotion, courage, and sacrifice of Major Caine M. Goyette. Semper Fidelis, presented by Town Supervisor John Lawler, but on behalf of the citizens of the town of Waterford."
Thank you, Supervisor. Next, I'd like to introduce our village mayor, J. Burt Mahoney.
Thank you, Frank. I've known the Goyette family for over 50 years. I've known Caine since he was born, watched him grow up to be a fine young man. Caine's grandfather, Ray, the patriarch of the family, was a great neighbor who was always willing to give a helping hand or loan you a tool. We used to call the neighborhood Mr. Goyette's neighborhood. It was our own little piece of Americana, and the boys, there were a lot of them. Caine, Russell, George, Jason, Brian, Eric, Tony, Frankie, and so many more that were a big part of that neighborhood. There were birthday parties, pool parties, sometimes just parties. We had a small pool in our yard, and the Goyettes had a bigger one, and sometimes they were in our pool, sometimes they were in their pool, and sometimes they were just running back and forth. All the adults in the neighborhood were aunt and uncle to everyone. I walked through the neighborhood the other day, and there were some boys playing basketball, and if you rolled the clock back 30 years, that was our boys. On any given day, there was a basketball game going on in the alley, and if there was a lot of hooting and hollering going on, it was usually because Mike Ferroni decided to play with the boys, and he was doing most of the hooting and hollering. They would play hounds and deers, matchboxes, G.I. Joe, combat. We have quite a few pictures of the whole gang dressed in camouflage across the back of the alley. My wife, Mike, used to take the boys fishing, and she would tell Russell and Caine, "Don't tell anybody, but we're going fishing tomorrow." And she'd walk out the back door, and there'd be at least 10 boys standing there. She felt like the Pied Piper leading the troop to fishing. Mike remarked the other day that Caine was the only boy with his own tackle box, and many of the neighbors remember Caine riding a bike in the neighborhood, always with a fishing pole. I remember Caine as a very polite boy, sometimes very shy and quiet, with a big laugh, a twinkle in his eye, and just a touch of mischief. But time stops for no one. They all grew up. There was high school. Some went to college. There were jobs, weddings, children. Caine graduated from Waterford, joined the Marines about a year after my son Russell did, and for several years they were stationed in the same squadron, Mal's 49 in Newburgh. My son fulfilled his enlistment and was discharged, but Caine decided to make the Marines a career, went to RPI, earned 2 degrees, and went on to earn a commission in the Marine Corps. Then he went on to become a pilot. I went to both Caine's weddings and his commissioning. He was commissioned and his second lieutenant bars were pinned on him right here in our local VFW post. I can remember how proud he was that day and how proud his family was of him. I have a picture of my 40th birthday party, and Caine, who was 11, and my son Russell, who was 12, are looking up at me. I have another picture of newly commissioned Second Lieutenant Caine Goyette, and I'm looking up at him. Caine was a fine Marine, a fine officer and pilot. His service record and his promotion to major in just 10 years shows that. A couple of years ago, Caine shared with me some pictures of an actual in-flight refueling. The pictures were spectacular, and Caine was not only very proud of what he was doing, he was very confident, and you could just tell he knew what he was doing. He was the real deal. Caine was a great husband and father. He loved his family unconditionally. He also loved the outdoors, beekeeping, and cared for the environment. He was the type of a guy you would remember. I wish there were words to ease the sorrow of the Goyette family. To his wife Andrea, his daughters, Cliff, Janice, and Aaliyah, I can say our community mourns with you and our hearts throb with sorrow. To all of Caine's family, our sincere condolences. I just want to let you know that this is a special park dedicated to Waterford's veterans. This park was established by the town in 1921, and the Soldiers and Sailors Monument was given to his hometown by Charles Cavanaugh in 1922. In 1989, the town added monuments listing all the names of those Waterfordians who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. There's already been some preliminary discussions and some ideas, but I hope that sometime in the near future, a suitable remembrance to Caine will be dedicated and Caine's name will be remembered forever. I feel very privileged and proud to have known such a fine man as Caine Goyette. They can never take away your memories, and I have a picture in my mind of a young Marine doing a salute with a sword. The few, the proud, the Marines. That was Major Caine Goyette. Thank you for your service, and God bless you, Caine.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. At this time, we will hear America the Beautiful from Capitol Brass. Thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to now introduce a lifelong friend of Caine's for a few words and a poem, A Hero's Welcome by Robert Longley, Mr. Ed Ralph. Eddie.
Hi, my name is Ed Ralph. I've known Caine for the past 36 years. Since being asked to speak, I've been thinking about what to say, what stories I should share, or give you an idea of the person that Caine was and what he meant to so many people. While I did not get the opportunity to speak with Caine on a daily basis as we grew older, we would contact each other and pick up right wherever we left off. Although our conversations changed from classwork to mortgage interest rates to how you have to now trim your ears and eyebrow hairs, he always remained solid with the answers he would give me. For those that don't know, Caine had a love for food, but especially desserts. We used to go to Stewart's on Hudson River Road because it was halfway between my house and his, and we would get make your own sundaes because you could afford to put gas in your car and get ice cream for under $5. And we would sit there for hours discussing anything and everything. Even after the ice cream was gone, he would pick at the extra toppings, mostly the Reese's Pieces. As time went on, one of the text messages that we'd send back and forth to each other was, make your own. That would guarantee a phone call as soon as possible from the other person. Going out for ice cream was still something he still enjoyed. Last time I spoke to him in May, he had just returned from getting ice cream with his family. So, senior year, we were allowed to drive our cars to and from school. Arriving one morning, Caine walked over to my car. We started to have a conversation about being hungry. He said he knew this place that has amazing hash browns. Knowing breakfast was the most important meal of the day, who was I to refuse? On a side note, I have always been horrible with directions. Caine said the restaurant is up in Long Lake. But in my head, I picture Round Lake. We took my car because Caine was known to hit a thing or drive over a thing with his. So we drove past exit 15 and I looked at him and said, where exactly is this place? An hour and a half later, we finally made it, only to discover the restaurant was closed. It took us 2 more trips that year before we got those hash browns. We had a conversation a few years ago. It might have been over a dinner at their house in Syracuse or right after the purchase of the farm, but it was how he was going to retire and become a farmer. Not just any farmer, a beekeeper and a jam maker. So after purchasing a farm, the pride and joy that he had for it was unreal. Every time we talked about it, it brought up some aspect of that farm. And I can't talk about Caine without talking about his laugh, which he inherited from Cliff. It was a laugh that once started was unstoppable and infectious. It didn't matter where he was or what he was doing. It would shake you to the core, and almost everyone I have spoken to in the past month has mentioned his boisterous laugh. I had the opportunity to grow older with Caine. I was with him when he graduated high school, when he graduated boot camp. I was a groomsman in his wedding. I was there when he was commissioned as a second lieutenant. And the last time I was with Caine, I helped carry him to his final resting place, where he can now look over his family. Caine was an amazing husband, father, son, brother, friend, and Marine, and he will truly be missed. Now, the poem that Russell picked for me to read is called A Hero's Welcome. Time to come home, dear brother, your tour of duty through. You've given as much as anyone could expect to do. Just a few steps further, the smoke will start to clear. Others here will guide you. You have no need to fear. You have not failed your brothers. You clearly gave it all. And through your selfless actions, others will hear the call. So take your place of honor among those who have gone before, and know you will be remembered for now and evermore. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Ed. And now I'd like to introduce another lifelong friend of Caine's and fellow Marine, Russell Mahoney.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. As you heard my father say, I grew up right down the street here with Cliff and Aaliyah and the whole Goyette family, and we were all like brothers and sisters. And I can't believe now I'm 40-something years old and standing here to honor Caine. It's just unbelievable. I feel like we were just there playing in the yard like we used to. It's unreal. I just have this poem I want to read on Caine's behalf. It's called Ask Me What I Was. And this is what I think of Caine. And it says, ask me what I was, I'll reply with what I've done. Those things others would not do, I did. Those rivers others would not swim, I swam. Those hills others would not climb, I conquered. And those bridges others would not cross, I crossed. I have celebrated and I have mourned. I have smiled and I have frowned. I have seen death and felt its warm breath, and it did not faze me. For I was different. I was a warrior. You ask me what I was? It was my destiny, until my last breath, to be a United States Marine, and my spirit shall live forever. Semper Fidelis, for I was, am, and shall forever be a United States Marine. Thank you.
And now for the Marine Corps hymn from Capitol Brass. Thank you. Please be seated. And I hope I get this right. I didn't clear it with the commander, but Marine Aerial Refueler Transport Squadron 452, or VMGR 452, is a reserve KC-130 Tango Squadron of the United States Marine Corps. They are currently based at Stewart Air National Guard Base in Newburgh, New York. I'd like to introduce the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Eisenhower.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. That was perfect. I have this goofy yellow sticky here because Caine would always tell me to stay focused and not get and the MIXO and not get distracted by shiny objects because I have a tendency to ramble. But I'll stick to my guns here. First of all, I want to thank the town of Waterford. This is truly amazing, very touching. And we appreciate it as a squadron. The Yankees of VMGR 452, as you can see over here, this means a lot for our hailing as well. Caine meant a lot to our squadron, meant a lot to me personally. So thank you all for putting this on and including us. I first met Caine back in 2005. I was an FRS instructor, and he was a student. And I remember this big, tall, blonde guy walking in, and I usually, like getting distracted by shiny objects, would ask some oddball question, and Caine nailed it. And I'm like, man, what is this? He's prior enlisted. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And then one of the FDOs said, yeah, he went to some school with a funny name. Rensselaer, I'm like, RPI? Are you kidding me? Oh, yeah, he was an electrical engineer. Okay. So, fast forward 8 years, I was super excited to work with him as a maintenance officer. I was a reserve maintenance officer. He was the active duty maintenance officer. And I can tell you, the Marines in the maintenance department absolutely loved him. He was one of the best leaders, one of the most charismatic leaders, and actually one of the funniest guys I know. He had a great sense of humor. He went to Bahrain for a year, as you all know, as they gave in his bio, and did great things there. And then he came back, and I'm so excited to have him back in the squadron as the operations officer. He was my right-hand man, and I'm going to miss that a lot. I was telling the family, his name is the first one I still send, my BlackBerry emails to the squadron, and his name is the first name that pops up. he meant a lot to me as a friend and as a squadron mate, and he will certainly be missed. Some things I tell you that I will miss about Caine is being a friend, being a mentor, a sounding board. He was always there for me. He was always there for the Marines of the squadron to sound off on. I will miss his kind of happy-go-lucky attitude and his laugh. It was pretty infectious. I will miss eating burritos at 3:30 in the morning, watching Master Guns Wason do the worm across the floor. By the way, since we all are a family, that stays here, okay? Please don't. That doesn't leave here. And I know Caine was a family man, and I know that was really important to him. I know, and I don't want to divulge a lot of personal, but I know that was his focus, and that was what he communicated to me. And I know he made every effort to get home. And as a family, I always preach to these guys, and I've told all the family members, he and you all will always be part of the Yankee family. You'll always be a part of VMGR 452, just as Caine is always going to be a part of VMGR 452. He left an indelible mark on the squadron for sure, and that's not just me saying that. It's true. You can see it in the faces of the Marines. You can see it around the squadron. So, again, I would like to thank you all for coming out here and sharing this with us. And I'd like to just leave in parting with the family theme. I'll leave you with something a retired colonel told me at a Memorial Day parade of all places a year ago. We as service members, as soldiers, sailors, Marine, Airmen, Coast Guard, Air Force, National Guardsmen, we certainly appreciate it when you come up and say, thank you for your service. Deep down, we appreciate that. That means a lot to us. But what I would encourage each and every one of you to do is when you see their family, thank you for their service and their sacrifice, because they sacrifice a heck of a lot more sometimes than we do. And again, just thank you all for coming out, and I'll turn it over to the XO now. Thank you.
How are you doing today? I'm going to try to change gears a little bit. Try to carry on from what the boss just said. My name is Major Greg Parker. I've known Caine for 12 years. I flew the second airplane that day. Well, I'm the less articulate, educated, and homelier version of the CO. I'm going to try to make some introductions. The first one I want to introduce you to are the Marines over here. All right, so as the CO said, you are, whether you like it or not, now part of the Marine family. Waterford and the Marines are connected. So there's some things that I need to tell you about who you're inheriting, okay? We are a fiercely loyal bunch of warriors. That's what you know, that's what you hear, it's what you see on commercials. All true, but there's some other things that you got to know. We're kind of our own subculture, all right? So we have our own traditions, our own politics, our own economy, our own currency, which is usually push-ups or duty. And we have our own language, which is equally weird and usually not very nice, right? So you got to understand that. So I'm going to give you some insider information here, and we need you to keep that here, please. So stop tape, right? Boss, I'm sorry. I got to give it away. All right, so I'm going to introduce you to Major Caine Goyette. You've heard a lot about who he was growing up. You've heard about his professional bio. But what you don't know is what he did every day. And that's where we come in, right? So Caine was a Marine first and foremost, a leader, an excellent pilot, and a chameleon. And I'll elaborate. I know that's a little bit of a strange word, but I'll elaborate. Please give me a minute. All right, so as a Marine, he believed to his core in what our mission is. It is to defend and support the Constitution of the United States and ultimately you. That's why we choose to do what we do. We don't do it for notoriety. We don't do it for the cool uniforms. And we certainly don't do it for the money. Caine believed that to his core. And I want you to know that. Second, he was a leader. This guy would defend to his dying breath his Marines. And if he felt like anyone was coming after his family, he had that mama bear attribute, and I love it. I'm going to give you a couple examples of that. And I wanted to let you know something, and you probably know this way better than I do, but Caine, like me, lacked a filter between here and here sometimes. Or the way I like to describe it to my wife is I have a filter, but it gets filled up with stuff real fast, so I bypass it. So here's a couple of examples. So we were in Louisville a couple months ago, and Caine got a disturbing phone call. And this is one of the times his filter worked. It was great. And he felt like someone was attacking one of his Marines. And he called me, he says, Greg, I need to come down and talk to you. I got to come down and talk to you. This guy he's driving me crazy, and I want to basically tell him to take a hike. He didn't say those words. He was a little more savory. Luckily, I talked him off the ledge, but he was willing to go to the mattresses for his guy, and that's who he was. The second example I'll say is the morning of the accident. We briefed, and at the end, we always have an opportunity for questions. I had some very pointed questions for Captain Elliott, the co-pilot. And as it is sometimes with us, it was uncomfortable. You know, we get into those environments, and when we have questions, sometimes it's uncomfortable because you don't know the answer. We left the brief, and Caine pulled me aside, and he said, hey, Greg, that's my fault. I own that. So Caine led with veracity and humility equally. Amazing. As a pilot, exceptionally talented. I'm not too proud to admit that guy would fly circles around me any day of the week. Anytime they saw him on the schedule, there was never a question about whether you were going to be all right. This guy was 2 steps ahead of the airplane all the time, and usually talking about bees in the air. So now the chameleon piece. I know that's a weird word. So Caine was adaptable to any environment, anything. So I'm going to give you some examples. He could be found drinking a high-calorie drink at Starbucks, dragging me to Dairy Queen twice a day during our 4-week exercise in Yuma, where I gained 10 pounds. 2 miles into our PFT, I was like, Caine, you SOB, man, killing me. He would also be found drinking a beer or what he called a Cidre, a cider, in the 3rd Street dive, watching a crappy band in the middle of the night. Or he could be found drinking a glass of sangria poolside in Palm Springs. So that's where the insider information comes. So you guys can't tell that to anybody because sangria sipping sunbathers doesn't necessarily instill fear in the North Korean army. So shh, keep that between us, okay? All right, so in closing, I want to say thank you again for letting us come celebrate with you, grieve with you, and introduce you to Major Goyette. But most importantly, welcome to our family. As dysfunctional as it is, you're part of it. So welcome, and thank you for having us.
As you all know, Caine Goyette, Major Caine Goyette, was not the only individual that lost his life that day. And I would like to introduce Chief Warrant Officer 4 Michael Famer for the reading of the names of all of those that lost their lives.
VMGR 452, Major Caine Goyette, Captain Sean Elliott, Gunnery Sergeant Brendan Johnson, Gunnery Sergeant Mark Hopkins, Staff Sergeant Joshua Snowden, Sergeant Owen Lennon, Sergeant Julian Kevon, Corporal Daniel Baldassare, Corporal Colin Schaff, 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, Staff Sergeant Robert Cox, Staff Sergeant William Kundret, Sergeant Chad Jensen, Sergeant Talon Leach, Sergeant Joseph Murray, Sergeant Dietrich Schmeeman, Petty Officer 2nd Class Ryan Laurie.
If we could all bow our heads in a moment of silence in honor of all of those names. If you all could please rise. Rifle squad, attention. Huh! Two. Please be seated. I just have a couple of brief things to say before we close. First, I just wanted to recognize and to show the impact that this has had across the area and especially across Waterford. But we are represented by several different veterans groups, Marine Corps League, Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, Military Order of the Purple Heart. We're represented here by the Saratoga County Sheriffs, members of the Saratoga County Veterans Peer Connection Program, the Department of Defense Employer Supported Guard and Reserve, the Saratoga Veterans Business Council, Blue Star Mothers, Veterans of Lansingburg. I know there's a lot of individual veterans, and we thank you for your service here today. If I've missed anybody, I do apologize. And most importantly, we're represented here with the United States Marine Corps. I personally want to thank Major Ann Braden for serving as my liaison in trying to plan this. She and others in the unit have been doing an outstanding job trying to assist Caine's family as well. And on behalf of our entire community, and I think I can safely say that, I would like to say one final thank you to Cliff and to your family for allowing us to honor Caine in this special way. We are very grateful for you for that. I think I don't normally do quotes, but in preparing for today's ceremony, I did find a quote that resonated with me. The legacy of heroes is the memory of a great name and the inheritance of a great example. Caine set an example for all to follow. He was a good son, brother, husband, father, friend, and Marine. He put his heart into all his endeavors and gave more of himself to something much larger than most of us will ever contemplate. We hope that Caine's family knows that the presence of all here today is proof that his name and legacy will not be forgotten in Waterford and beyond. And finally, I would like to also thank our Marines who have joined us today. They have all personally experienced great loss, but despite that, they will carry on with their duties and continue to set an example for all to follow. And without the men and women like you, all of us could not be here today. Please join me in showing them our appreciation for them and for all that are in uniform. And if you could please remain standing, color guard, release the colors. Hand salute. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Waterford Town Board, the Village of Waterford, and all here today, I want to thank you, thank the Goyette family. Go in peace, and thank you for joining us.